Ladies and gentlemen, this is your time to grow, give, and expand. I'm your host, Doug Myers. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Grow, Give, Expand podcast. I'm your host, Doug Myers, and this is the 10th episode. We've made it to a decade. Amazing. Love it. I want to thank all the guests that have come on the show so far and all the future guests that we've got lined up. I've got an amazing cast of people who are going to be coming on the show as we are moving into a real estate investing mini-series. That's right, a real estate investing mini-series with a variety of high-performing, high-functioning, and super successful real estate investors from across the country. We're going to be talking to individual investors, couples that invest together, married couples. We're going to be talking to partners, people who have created a real estate investing business. And we're going to hear some of the different stories, the different strategies, and the many ways in which people are using real estate to create income, to create wealth, and to create freedom. It's going to be some very interesting conversations, so whether you're a first-time or a new real estate investor, an experienced real estate investor with a number of doors under your belt, or a highly veteranized real estate investor, I think there's going to be something here of value for you as you listen to these stories, hear some new strategies, and maybe you'll pick up a tip or two that'll help you save some money on a new deal, help you raise money from potential partners, and move your real estate investing career in the direction that you desire. My first guest is Julia Pereira. She's an energetic real estate investor originally from Toronto and currently residing in Vancouver, British Columbia. Julia is a regulated healthcare professional with 19 years of experience, and when she was working full-time, she started her real estate investing portfolio. At the beginning of her journey, she took the time to get educated, learning about real estate investing opportunities and strategies for both using in BC and across the country. And through that, she became a member of the Real Estate Investment Network. In 2018, she picked up the Bronze Pin Award for obtaining her first 3 investment properties, and in 2019, she scaled up, becoming a Top Player Award winner for the BC area. In addition to her real estate investing, she's a financial life professional with the Legacy Council of Canada and a member of REN, where she co-hosts the events with the group, REN being WREN, the Women's Real Estate Network. A self-professed learning addict, we are digging into the details of her real estate investing portfolio, her work within the healthcare community, and why it's so important for people to be financially prepared for life's crucible moments. We talk about building mindset, fortifying mindset, and of course, what Julia is doing in her real estate investing portfolio right now, and why it was so important for her to identify herself within the real estate investing game before she actually started getting going. This is a really important question for investors because if you identify for yourself where you fit in the game, you're going to be better able to understand what investments, what opportunities, and what kind of role you want to play in your real estate investing journey. With that being said, I'm incredibly excited to have had this conversation with Julia and to now share it with you. Get out your pens, your notepads, and put your mind on alert because Julia is about to rock the show. Let's grow, give, and expand with this episode's guest, Julia Pereira. Julia Pereira, welcome to the Grow, Give, Expand podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm super great, thank you, and I'm so excited to be on.
Right on. Yeah, this is exciting. So you were the first person to be leading the way on this new real estate investor mini-series that I'm doing. And I'm grateful that you've taken the time to do so. You and I have gotten connected through some of these real estate communities. And so for those people that don't know you, and I'm sure there are many who are listening, but there are many who also know you and probably love you because you have really high energy. Tell the people, who is Julia Pereira?
Well, before I get started talking about myself, I want to say something to you. I want to give you something. it's amazing what you've done over the past year in the time that we've gotten to know each other. Like, you're totally growing out of your comfort zone, quitting your job, creating this podcast, which is huge, giving back to the community. And then we can't forget this past week when you got Rookie of the Year award.
Oh, man.
Congrats. That's awesome. And then yesterday, you're on stage with Keyspire. Like, I'm actually honored to be on this podcast with you. I don't know if I should be the one asking the questions.
Oh, gosh.
But, no, it's actually an honor for me, definitely, to be on this with you, Doug, for real. So that's great.
Oh, thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
What was the question again?
The question was, who are you?
Oh, yes. Who am I? So I like to think of myself as a multi-leveled person. So I'm an attentive and loving wife. I'm a younger sister to two incredible siblings. I say I'm an extraordinary aunt. I'm a loving daughter, although I must say that I sometimes march to my own drum. And then, of course, I'm a part-time real estate investor and a part-time regulated healthcare professional. So I'm actually a consultant OT. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so, yeah, you and I have connected through a couple of different real estate investing communities. So I'm curious if we can kind of start back at the beginning, because we do want to focus, of course, on that type of context here for what we're doing with the mini-series. So why did you want to get started in real estate investing?
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of been in my genes. I mean, I think I've told you this story in passing, and that my parents both immigrated to Toronto from Portugal. And my uncle came before them, and he's kind of the spearhead of the family who got into real estate. And I used to be one of those kids who used to, on weekends, go with my parents to their rental units and help paint them when they were flipping over tenants, or even do some of the applications, the tenant applications and whatnot. So it's always been in me, but my parents were both blue collar workers, and I was, destined to go to the white collar job, which I certainly did and very much enjoyed. But so the inspiration for real estate I think already was living within me, but where it really came to fruition for me that it was an area that I wanted to get into was when I was at my white collar job, if you want to say that. I had done great things in my career. It's incredible. It continues to be a great field to work in. But where I guess I kind of got a little bit sidetracked was when it was, I was spending a lot of time working and not a lot of time focused on my future and on focusing on myself. So that's kind of really the pinnacle point of when I realized, like, hey, it's great. I make good money. I contribute to my RSPs and I contribute to TFSA, but that wasn't going to secure me for the rest of my years to come and the lifestyle that I wanted. So yeah, that was really, I'd say, the key factor. And while I was working, I joined a real estate network, the Real Estate Investment Network. And it took me 2 years before I actually did anything. So yeah, because I was so busy doing my job. So yeah, it was definitely a bit of an eye opener that I needed to move along.
Mm-hmm. But after 2 years, you got into action, you got the first investment. Tell me what happened after that, because you mentioned one of the awards that I won this past week, and so thank you for that. It did mean a lot. It was awesome, and I'm happy you were there. But not to play you short, you also won an award that night. She won. Julia won one of the top player awards for the year 2019 for properties purchased and invested in. So obviously, since the hiatus or the runway of 2 years to get that first deal done, you have since flown this plane high into the sky, and you've done a lot of deals. So what happened after that first deal? Where have you gone?
Well, yeah. So that first deal was really the stepping stone. And when I did that first deal, I actually was still working full time. So I actually hired a coach who helped me put systems together because I just really didn't have time at that point. I was in a corporate level position, and I was responsible for quite a big team and quite a big division in the company that I was working at. So that was it was a quick kind of, consider all the economic factors, where's a good low vacancy, all those types of factors. I had a great realtor on my team who really instilled a lot of confidence in me in terms of where I could purchase. And so when I purchased that property, when that coach came on and helped me out, as it went, like I've had the tenants and I property managed it, I started to realize really quickly the leverage that this had for me. And so following that, I did some private lending. I did a JV with a rent to own. I've since then purchased another place that is double suited. And continued to do similar private lending. And then finally, just this past week, I'm very fortunate and grateful to be part of a team of 4 JVs with a 16-unit apartment building. So things have really come to fruition, and they've grown and changed along the way as my goals have since the inception of starting this. So that's been, I think, something I didn't anticipate. I went into this just thinking it was all about buy and hold, but given some of the courses I've taken and some of the people that I've met in our network and in our industry, it's really, broadened my perspective on what's out there and how I can leverage myself and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm, totally. You bring up a good point, and I will just kind of preface some of the conversations that I had yesterday with a group of aspiring real estate investors. And a number of people had asked, at what point do you see people transition to, say, larger deals, like, commercial, multifamily apartments and things like that? And it's kind of this real estate investor progression, right? You start with residential properties, and then you move into maybe duplexes and triplexes, and you do renovations, and then people move into private lending, and then they do the bigger and bigger deals. And so, what you've told me here is that you've done a number of these different kinds of things. What that now allows you to do, though, tell me a little bit about what that's allowing you to do, because you now have investments in different places, different kinds of properties. I can tell, and you're very interested in coaching people, but what's that allowed you to do as well within your job, the previous job that you had, and now how you can live your life?
Yeah, no. Great question. I've done more for our future in these past 2.5 years than I think I've done in my 19 years in my career. And it's not to say that I haven't grown in my career, but it's more to say in terms of securing us moving forward. So in terms of things that it's allowed me to do is, one, my confidence has skyrocketed, because here I was in 19 years in my career, and I was super confident in my career, but I had that fear of going into real estate because I'm a healthcare professional. What do I know about real estate? So I had that fear, but knowing that I've done as much as I have in the last little bit of time, it's allowed me to create a consultant role in the healthcare world. So I have 2 companies that I consult with that has allowed me to design what my week looks like. So I'm not 100% doing full-time work with them, but rather I've created, I've identified what my strengths were in my professional career, what my strengths were, and I work on things that I enjoy. Knowing that I'm not there because I need the paycheck. Knowing that I'm getting funded in other realms. So that's been one. So it's allowed me to design my week around my work per se. It's also allowed me to really focus on what I'm super passionate about, which is learning, educating, and networking. Like those, if you had to describe me in one way, those are the 3 things that I'm always, focused on. And, I am a nerd who comes home and does courses and, is always looking to better. So that being said, it's allowed me to do that from my work perspective, but also in my lifestyle, because now I focus on things around my health, and which kind of took a back seat when I was in my previous role, and being more intentional. Now when I go and do a visit, when I first moved out here to BC, because I'm originally from Toronto, I would go home and show up for an occasion, and I'd fly in for 3 days and fly out. So I'd basically leave on Friday night on a red eye and get back out here for Monday morning. And but now I'm way more intentional. I tag on extra days because I'm able to tag on some extra days. And when I'm there, I'm actually there, as opposed to always being on my phone or always having a meeting and that type of thing. So I'm not saying that I don't get on my phone and I don't sometimes schedule meetings, but I'm just more cognitively aware that it's about being there for my family and being there for particularly my niece and nephews who, you're trying to be a role model for. So so it's really given me good perspective with that. And, I mean, there's lots of good things in life there's lots of stuff you can get. That's another thing I've learned is it isn't about stuff. It's about experiences. So I've had some amazing vacations this past year, and, being able to take time off and not, worry about what the visa will look like later. So it's been really good. Thank you. First, thanks for asking. It's good to reflect on those things.
No, it's very important. And to have got the freedom and the awareness to be able to create that lifestyle by design, that's something that we often talk about in some of the rooms that you and I have shared the pleasure of being in is creating that by design. And it's not so much about the specific avenue in which we do it. We do it because we really like real estate. That's number one. But number two, it's just using that as a platform to create, of course, what you want. And you brought this up many times here just in what you just said. I wanted to hone in on one of the things there, actually, that you brought up, which was networking, because you're really good at this. You're really good. Yeah, I always find that you're sitting down at different tables. You have a great energy whenever I meet you in person. I see other people interacting with you. And I know that's moving you into more of a coaching thing that you want to do as well. So what kind of tips and strategies, if that, or maybe just feeling that you bring when you want to network with a group of people? Because you're very confident in that. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, and I think that's actually been the key to the success, has been networking. You can read books till the cows come home, but if you don't do anything about what you read, you're not going to get any further. And so the truth was, in the beginning, that's it. I was reading and quite frankly, I was a little bit intimidated by some of the people that were in some of these rooms, but it's starting on a smaller scale. Like, just start with the people that are at the table that you're at. And what I find is ask questions, because answers are in your questions. Like, it sounds like a bit weird to say that, but the truth is, the more you ask, the more you'll actually hear. And as opposed to going there and trying to consume everything. And it is incredible how many people are at your level when you're in those rooms. You think everybody's has 20 doors or 25 doors or 100 doors. And well, the reality is it's not the case. Some people haven't started, and some people have a few doors or have many doors, but you'll find your place in there. And I think what I've gone to is probably more in the last year, 2 years, where I've really become a little bit more confident in these circles is go to give. Don't just go to get. Like, we often go to these things and you want to consume all this information, but the truth is what's your intention with consuming all the information? It's impossible to walk away and be able to implement everything you get. So go there with an open mind to be able to give something to someone or share a story. I've been in situations where people talk about their families, and that's how you've connected. And in truth, any JV partner that I've had to date, that's been a huge factor. Yeah, the deal's important, that it cash flows, that it has lots of forced appreciation and market value and all that type of stuff. But the reality is, it's been about the relationship with the person. because this is a long-term relationship with this individual. So being able to open yourself up and being vulnerable and, telling where you're at and being truthful about where you're at, it's amazing what people will give you and what you can gain, and then what you can also give in return. And then I'd also say, if big rooms are not for you, go to a meetup. Like, go to a smaller meetup where maybe it's, new people starting out, putting a group together and there's 10 people, and make a goal before you leave about how many people you're going to meet. Like, that is one really important thing. There's no sense in going to a meetup and then not actually coming away with anyone that you can continue to connect with. Can I just tell a quick story?
Yeah, of course.
So I went to, it was Rain, it was Acre, and I was sitting at a table at Acre, and I didn't know anyone at the table. And I met a gentleman that was at the table, actually two gentlemen that were at the table. And we made a deal at the end of Rain. This was 2 years ago. We made a deal and said, okay, let's stay and let's be accountability partners, because Rain had challenged people to get an accountability partner. And one fell off quickly. The other individual stayed on with me. And for just under 2 years, we talked every Monday. Now, let's take that with context there.
Of course.
I mean, we had some times where we didn't, but for the most part, we were pretty consistent with it. And he works full time, and I had already transitioned out. And, it was a bit of a motivator for him to be chatting, because he knew that I was going to events and he didn't have time to go to events. So we kind of kept each other up to date on what was happening. And we talked about strategies, and he was reading some books and he would share that with me. And we made a deal somewhere down the line that we would do a deal together. And part of it was that he wanted, he said to me that his wife had to be on board. So somewhere in there, I met his wife, and lovely lady, and we chatted, and it was important for him that she knew who I was and whatnot. And long story short, come to fruition, that deal that I just told you about, the JV 16 unit that I just told you about, our vendor takeback fell through. The vendor takeback on the deal fell through, and I was able to bring this gentleman into the deal. And him and his wife were happy, and he's in the deal, and all is well. And that took 2 years to come to head, but there was no intention other than let's keep each other motivated and let's keep going. And, and that gave me a little bit more equity in the deal for myself, which wasn't what I was after. At the end of the day, I was after us both being in on a deal. So yeah, it was, and that all of that just from networking and being in touch with someone and staying connected.
Mm-hmm. I hear so many stories like that where the right intention wins. It's not that intention to let's just make money and let's have a deal happen as soon as possible, right? You had no intention in a lot of ways of ever having this happen. You were just holding each other accountable to something bigger. And in doing that, you ended up doing a deal together because, of course, over time you built relationships. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. And you brought up another point there as well, that about your comparative status to people in some ways. I'm so with you. It's funny in telling my story to people, and some of them go, "Whoa, that's crazy, where you're at." And I'm just like, well, hold on a second. You don't know this guy, you don't know this girl, you don't know these people. But I think and what I've now come to realize is that we all have things that we can give to other people. If you have one more door than somebody else, you in a lot of ways have things that can be provided of value to them. And it's just for us to take responsibility for our own knowledge and our own expertise. I think that's so important, especially for people that want to coach and want to lead others, such as yourself. I know this is something that's important for you. So maybe we can kind of use that as a segue into the conversation earlier, because you said you hired a coach to help you out to get started. So tell me about why that was important for you and what the result of was now. And then fast forward, I know you're working with another coach now. So tell me about the coaching relationships that you have and why they're so important for you and what you're doing in terms of real estate.
Yeah. At the time, I'll be quite honest, when I got that coach, when I bought that first property, prior to that, I had properties where we had put tenants in the basement, but to me, that was no different than what I was living in the property. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't need a coach for that. I knew how to screen tenants, put them in. I had helped my dad so much. I felt pretty confident with that. But that coach, I'll be honest, I hired because I had no time. I had like zero time on my hands to do it. My job was really like stressful. I had a lot going on. But I learned a lot from that coach, and I learned a lot just from even adopting systems and not trying to reinvent the wheel, and being able to implement someone's system and then add to it was such a great foundation for me. Now, the other thing about coaches, to be honest with you, is I've had them my whole life. I played sports. I had a coach. When I went to OT school, I didn't have a coach, but when we did our practicum, we had a preceptor supervisor. That was like a coach, someone who would tell you what you're doing, what you need to improve on, where you're going, what your performance is like. In my corporate job, at one point, I had a business coach. So it only was logical to me because I've succeeded in a lot that I've put my mind to or that I've wanted to accomplish, because of always having that person who helps me improve my behavior, helps me develop better habits, and evaluates my performance and gives me something that's measurable. Not that I can't do it on my own, but the reality is we have a horrible kind of thing or being, and I'm infamous for this, is limiting our beliefs sometimes, where you feel that, this is as far as I can get. This is all I can do. Yep, I did really good. Look at me. I got 5 doors. That's awesome. And thinking that that's where you need to be. I find with a coach, you get to another level. My coach recently just recommended that I read Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it's so great in that it is about pushing yourself to a level of genius. We can all achieve a level of excellence, which is where you're comfortable. It's kind of like your day job. You do really well there. But to get yourself to a level of genius where you get above that, which you do need someone in your corner, because that's a scary place to try to get. But what it does is it allows you to quit accommodating my limitations. And that's one thing that's been so forefront for me, is there is no limitations. Limitations are what you put on. And it comes full circle for me, because as a therapist, I work with people who have had some kind of an impairment or some kind of a disability. And, the fact that now you're confined to a wheelchair means you have the limitation of not being able to walk. Usually that's how people see it. No, I can't walk anymore. Look at me, I'm in a wheelchair. But the reality is it doesn't make you immobile. You can still walk you could still propel with your arms or propel with your legs. So at the end of the day, that's always been kind of my mission, is that there's always a solution. There's always somewhere you can get to higher. And I have to say, I attribute that to the people that coach me, in that they've always pushed me one step further than where I could take myself to. I'm a fairly motivated person, so I can bring myself to a certain level, but it's been such a plus to have people expand some of my ideas or give me feedback that, hey, you know what, that's not the best approach, or maybe this is a better route to take, and try this on. And so it's been, I've been super fortunate, I have to say. I've had some amazing mentors in my life, and I continue to, engage in that kind of a relationship. And I think I will for whatever I do moving forward. And, and I've been fortunate to be one as well in my profession. And then having taken the LREIA / financial life planner with Rain, it's an honor to kind of be able to chat with people about them wanting to have a different life, or them wanting to they have a different vision for what they want and for their financial future. It's been a bonus for sure.
Mm-hmm. As a healthcare professional, so you see people who are challenging or are challenged by an impairment of some kind. Mm-hmm. And I'm really interested to know, what kind of an impact that has on you, if any, in terms of your belief and your desire that being financially free and taking control of your financial future is so important. Because you probably see people who either did not take care of it before, or as a result of them not taking care of it before, are now taking on debt. They're being forced to live a life that is more or less out of their control, or they have family members or friends who are impacted financially by their circumstance. Is there something for you that resonates with recognizing and seeing the difficulties, seeing the challenges of those kinds of people, and just knowing, if they were set up financially and they did something similar to you, that they would be better able to cope and handle the situation that they're currently in?
I can't stress it enough. It is probably one of the biggest eye-openers being in the healthcare profession, especially mine, because what I work on is rehabbing people after they've had some kind of an illness or an injury or a disability. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that the public system is going to be there and the public system is going to help. Depending on what province you're in, there is, to give a comparative example. If you're in Ontario, you get a certain amount of coverage for equipment. Let's say you require a wheelchair. You get a certain amount of, like 75% coverage for the equipment. If a therapist and a doctor, deem it appropriate and recommend it. In BC, no such program exists. And as a therapist, and I'm just quoting here, a wheelchair can cost you anywhere between $3,000 to $8,000, and power chairs can run you up to $20,000. I've recommended a chair for someone that was $35,000, and because highly specialized, sometimes require more. And the reality is when when a system, I'm not going to say government because there are systems out there that do cover some of this, but I'm yet to find a system that covers 100% of such a fee. And when I go back to the story that I gave you about, all of a sudden you can't walk, so you no longer have mobility. Is it really a choice to go without? It's not, because now you really are going to be limited. And so what ends up happening is people go with whatever they're given. They go with, like, I work predominantly right now in geriatrics, in nursing facilities. So they get what they get. And if anything, it impedes them further and impacts them further. So between the fact that you can't get, if you have, let's say you have a stroke, you get so much therapy, but then it stops after a certain amount of time. Who's going to pay for your private therapy? So I think when you have another source of income, another opportunity, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, is even if you have a house and you had to sell it to give you that money to rehab you, at the end of the day, you had a choice. You had something. So I can't stress it enough that there's got to be more. You can't sit around and wait for the government to fund this. Extended health is awesome, but they don't cover everything. For example, extended health does not cover an occupational therapist initial assessment. We're the ones that come into the home and help make all the modifications in the house. So, there's definitely, there's pitfalls in the funding systems that are out there. So yeah, if anything, it just reinforces why you have to have alternative funding. You have to have money somewhere else. And I'm saying this, Doug, is us getting older, but the truth is this can happen tomorrow. And not to say anything, if you were to get into a motor vehicle accident, yes, you have your motor vehicle insurance, but that doesn't last forever. A work safe accident, you can't rely on these systems forever. So if you continue to need other things, yes, they fund you. But again, if you want private therapy, or if you want, some people want the aging in place. What a great one. A lot of people want to stay at home. It costs $10,000 to have a home care worker in your home for a year, all year round, like 24 hours rather. We're not talking low ticket prices here. So yeah, if if that could be a huge driving force, let alone for ourselves, but then what about for our families? What about for myself, my aging parents, and I have siblings and whatnot. So yeah, I would never want to be in a situation where I'm strapped and I can't help them. So it's definitely been an eye opener. I don't focus on it a lot in the sense that I take it home because I kind of keep that separate. But I will tell you, when I see people that don't get which like it's a means to them moving around and getting to the store or getting to the bathroom, for crying out loud, and yet they just don't have it. Mm-hmm. They don't have the money to get it.
Yeah. Do you see that as part of a conversation moving forward? That I can tell you're really passionate about the subject. Is this part of what you want to be pushing forward? Because I know you did mention it earlier. You're part of legacy. You're part of what is becoming the financial life professional. Is that a conversation that you want to take out into the world and really focus on in terms of developing yourself, again, in terms of not only the real estate side of things, but being more of a public-facing figure around coaching and consulting and kind of bringing those two worlds together in some ways? Is that a part of what you want to do?
Sorry, so when you're saying that, do you mean in terms of making people aware of why they might, like what they could face?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, you know what, it's innate. It comes up in conversations all the time. And it comes up in conversations when people are saying, my goal is to have a big house. My goal is to have this. And I'm like, those are awesome goals. I strive for them, but at the end of the day, you also need to have security. You also need to have money for a rainy day. And I hate to say that a rainy day could be, unfortunately, an accident, or can be a medical condition that was not anticipated. And if the funds aren't there, especially with self-employed people, like if you don't have your own extended health coverage, what do you do? Like you're kind of hands in the air. There's not a lot you could do. So absolutely, that is a conversation of like utmost, like first and foremost, before you say, let me get the nice car, let me get the nice house and all the other things that people want, that because without health, what do you have?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Like seriously, without health, what do you have? And without quality of life, you could have pockets and pockets of money or cars in a garage, or, what's the significance at that point? So yeah, it's definitely an ongoing conversation for me. I'm a little biased because I live it and I see it. So, but the truth in that is that it holds a lot more credibility because it's reality of what I see.
Totally.
And I don't just see, and I've worked with every walk of life. So I've seen children who have been in motor vehicle accidents. I've seen, people, well, not people our age, because I'm a little older than you, but, the young adult and the a bit, I don't know, I guess more mature adult.
Sure.
And then, of course, as you get older, right? It's inevitable as you get older. But yeah, so,
mm-hmm. So
most definitely.
For people who are hearing that, and there maybe the initial thought in my mind is, am I prepared for that potential situation? Am I prepared to handle a moment of crisis in my life from a financial standpoint? And if the option for them is to be involved in real estate, to start investing in real estate, what would be your suggestion for that person starting out? Of course, you started out a while back and you've grown a portfolio of a sizable amount. You're doing a number of different deals. So back at square one, what do you think are the first steps that people need to do in terms of getting involved if they want to become a real estate investor?
Well, I think probably the first and foremost thing to do is like read a book like Don Campbell's. Like, what's that book? The Little Book of Real Estate in Canada. Read a book like that to get an idea of what it actually takes to be an investor. And then try to figure out, what type of investor are you? Because not everyone's cut out to do a buy and hold. Not everyone's cut out to do a JV. Not everyone could be the managing partner on a JV deal. Flips, Like renovations, let me tell you, like you really, that's a whole other level. So trying to figure out if that's for you. Maybe none of that's for you, but yet passive investing is for you. And maybe you already have a portfolio of money, i.e. a TFSA or an RRSP that can start generating something for you. So truly, I think the biggest thing is to find out, just like you would anything else in life when you're researching it, is to find out where do you as an individual and your lifestyle fit into this. And a good example of that, Doug, is I only really knew buy and holds because that's what my family's always done. And so when I did buy and holds, I bought in an area that I wasn't as sure about the clientele, to the point where I didn't get, the first month that we owned it, we didn't put a tenant in because I was like, nope, we haven't had the right person come through. And trust me, it made me nervous because I was like, whoa, mortgage payment, no one's paying it. But there was something about waiting for the tenant that I knew I'd be able to handle and property manage. So something as simple as that you overlook because you're too busy looking at cash flow and you're too busy looking at return on investments, cash on cash, return on investments, all those fancy things we talk about. But dial it back a notch and think about, who are you in this and how does this work? Is your life so busy that you can't property manage? So that then you can pick the strategy that works for you just to get involved. It can grow later, right? It can totally grow later. And at the end of the day, you don't need to quit your job to come do this full time. That's not for everybody and it's not supposed to be. So yeah, I think what's really important is just learn a little bit. Now, that being said, I have this thing that I call the 4 C's. Okay. I'm just going to pull it up here because I always get them in the wrong order. So you consume information to begin with. Okay. So that's like reading the book, connect with people, go to some networking event. Meetups, or some of these organizations offer 1 or 2 day or a few hour free sessions. Go to those, meet some people, create some kind of a plan, and then commence. Commence is probably the most important in those 4, which is take action, do something. Even if doing something is going to a mortgage broker and saying, look what I have. What can I do? Even if it's that, or get your will together, for crying out loud. Just take some kind of action based on what you've consumed and what you've gained from connecting with people. So to me, quick and dirty, and I hate to say it, but kind of cheap. Let's throw another C in there. It's cheap to start, right? When you think about it, because just grab a book and, read a little bit about it, get a sense of where you're supposed to be in that, and move from there.
I like that. It's about really identifying where you sit within the conversation. That's almost step 1, because like you said, not everybody's cut out for it. And I think that's really important to contextualize. It's just and then the other part of it is, even if you're not cut out for it, someone else might be cut out for it that can do it for you. And that's the other piece. When you get into real estate a little bit further, I know, I'll give an example. I've got some friends who sometimes I explain to them the JV agreement that I have. And they're like, what? That person is getting that much more percentage than you are? And I'm like, yeah, but I've done no work. They've done all the work. They found the deal. They negotiated the price. They've got the financing. They've done all the assessments, all the inspections. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to complain. And in that sense, at that time, that's what worked for me. That's okay. And then when you're ready, if you feel like, hey, I can go do that, then you go do it. But you've got to find where your place is. And that's why I have to be honest. This is where I go against the grain a little bit. I know that the general premise that we get in real estate is find your niche, find what you do best, do it, repeat it, rinse, repeat, recycle, rinse, repeat, recycle. I do believe that there is a lot of merit in that. I've seen lots of people have great success, but I also believe that our life changes over time and your priorities change and your goals change. So to really kind of
roll with what's happening in your life at the time. Sometimes you need to change what type of investor you are. And that's why instead of people thinking like, oh my God, I got to buy a house and I got to put tenants in it and I got to go unplug toilets, like that doesn't have to be the reality of it by any stretch.
Yeah, you bring up a good point here. And I want to preface it with some conversations that I did have yesterday with some younger guys. And they identified a very common issue that a lot of people seem to think they have. I don't have any money. I don't know why anybody would want to invest with me. That's your problem number one. You've already counted yourself out.
Yeah.
But they just don't realize until they start to think about it and get the new perspective. And I provided that perspective and you just provided it as well, is that not everybody wants to do the work. Yep. They're either too busy or they've done it before and they don't want to do it anymore. Or they're just looking for something passive, right? And so, especially for the younger folks or the people who don't have the money to put into their own deals, if you can get really good at creating value through what you do, get educated, take some chances, calculated chances, believe in yourself, and then sell that best version of yourself to somebody who has the capital but doesn't want to put in the work, you can get paid for that. And there are people who build portfolios doing exactly that strategy. So the excuse of I don't have any money can be blown out of the water in an instant. It's not easy by any means, but if anybody, if everything was easy, as they say, we would all be doing it. Yep. But it's totally possible. And people build multi-million-dollar portfolios out of that exact strategy.
And Doug, this just goes back to the point we were chatting about earlier, was limiting beliefs. You set your own. We all do it. We all set our own limiting beliefs. And that's what you choose to believe until you're told otherwise or you see otherwise. And it's a mindset. And I have to tell you, mindset is something that one must work on every day. That's to have any success in this industry, you have to work on your mindset. There will be those days where you think like, what am I doing? Why did I get into this? It would be so much easier just to be doing A, B, and C. But the truth is you if you're constantly telling yourself something, that's what happens. What is that theory out there that you buy a Honda CRV and then all of a sudden all you see is Honda CRVs?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can't remember what that.
I believe it's the reticular activating system.
There you go.
You start to pick up on things that you're paying attention to.
Right. So if you walk into a room and you're like, I have no money. I don't know even, I'm here at this real estate thing, but I have no money. I have no money. That's all you'll hear. You will go to that session with that in your head and all you'll hear is you can't do it. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to ask questions. Even when you're reading a book, I just learned this recently. I'm taking a course right now on speed reading and mindful reading and increasing your comprehension when you're reading, because I just don't feel like there's enough time in my lifetime for all the books that I want to read. But in this course, I've learned that the best thing to do is ask questions. Ask questions before you read a chapter. Because why? Then that's what you'll get out of that chapter. I feel the same way about going to a course. Ask yourself why you're there. Ask yourself, what are you going to get out of that? Ask yourself, how many people do you want to meet? What type of people do you want to meet? And forget the business about, I don't have money. Leave that at the front door, slam that door and get in there with new questions, because that will change it. That will change what you get from that. Because what's interesting, Doug, is you probably had that whole session. They sat there throughout the whole session. They listened to all these motivating things. They listened to all these success stories. And the first thing out of their mouth was still, but I have no money. So they actually just wasted, I hate to tell you, they wasted the day. So yeah, it's amazing. And it's funny because I also teach at CapU. I'm a guest lecturer at CapU in my field. And it's an approach that I'm going to take for my course. I'm a guest speaker on paramobility, and I'm coming in here to give you a bunch of information. That's great, but what do you want out of this information? So that at least you walk out with 5 or 6 questions answered. if that's all you retain, that's better than when you walked in here. And it also gets rid of all your preconceived notions of what you think the topic is about. So again, that's, that would be my advice for that person.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah. The quality of your questions often determines the quality of your life. And,
that's right.
You start asking different questions, then you start seeking different answers. And many times that's great. I'm going to have to follow up with you on this speed reading / reading comprehension course.
Yeah, no worries.
That just drives me insane. Gosh, I have so many books that I want to read. I do the audiobook thing in the car because I do a lot of driving too. But yeah, I'm a slow reader. It just drives me insane. So we'll reconnect on that one.
Yeah, no worries.
There's kind of two directions that I want this to go because you brought up mindset. So I'd like to ask you about that. And then I'd like to head into some of the nuts and bolts of your real estate portfolio and find out what that's about. I think that'd be important for us to understand and hear, and how you've kind of structured that so that it can fit into the lifestyle that you wanted to create. So we'll park that in the distance coming up. Okay. Stay tuned. But first, you mentioned there that working on your mindset every day is so important. And I've had a number of people on the podcast here, and it keeps coming up. Mindset. So everybody has a different way of going about it. I'm curious what you do to fortify your mindset on a daily basis and why that's so important. You'd mentioned it, but of course, how you do it.
So, and I'll tell you something. I never took the time out in my previous roles to focus on my mindset. I just had to have answers. And it's amazing how that led to just exhaustion. Right? Because you never take time to get out of your business. And now I believe in that wholeheartedly, to take time to get out and look at what's happening. And that includes looking at what's happening to you as an individual. So my mindset it's massive, I come from immigrant mentality, right? Work hard. And I love it, but I would like my money to work harder. Than me. And I learned yesterday in a course, 2 things. I'm just going to divert for a minute. 2 things that are always consistent. You go to work and your money goes to work. Which one do you want to work harder? And I'm like, my money. But basically, what I do is on a regular, I will journal daily. Okay. Gives me an opportunity to get rid of some things that are maybe bothering me, but then moreover, give me an opportunity to redirect how I'm approaching something. So journaling is a big one for me. I always have a self-development book on the go as I do a business book, whatever I'm into at that point. I have a little like Bristol board piece of paper that has I statements on it. That they're not incantations like Tony Robbins style. However, that's where I took the idea from, that I basically read over to myself, and it sits in front of me so that I look at it on those days where I think things aren't going so hot. I look over and I'm like, nope, this is what I am. This is who I am. This is where I am. This is why I'm here, type of thing. And then evenings, I do a gratitude to just what's going on in my life. And I try to make that one very personal to make sure that I'm constantly appreciating what I have. And then throughout my day, if I have a situation where I'm kind of upset, or things aren't working out for me, or it kind of went sideways, or someone frustrated me, or that type of thing, or I frustrated myself, I'll take time out. Like I'll just take time out. Like I'll take 1 minute out and just 1 to 5 minutes, whatever it is I can handle, and just try and refocus and say like, hey, you know what? And like self-talk, I guess, give myself a little bit of a pep talk. And then the last one that I use is I have accountability partners. So I have people that I can call up that I basically say like, hey man, I'm like, I don't think I want to do this today. And they're like, yeah, I'll meet you at 5.
5 a.m. Be there.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, 5 it is. I will be there. So yeah. And then the other one, Doug, along with mindset, has been health set. And I've learned this one with, Robin Sharma?
I absolutely do. 5 a.m. club.
Yeah, exactly. So Robin Sharma has been saying, he's always been about mindset and soul set and this type of thing. And a big one that he's pushed a lot too is health set. And I've always just naturally played lots of sports and this and that and, been able to keep my health in check. But when I went into the corporate world, that didn't go so well. And I just couldn't find time and really exhausted and whatnot. And so now that's becoming a huge priority. And I just started I just put together a little program that I made up, which was 30-30 for September, which is 30 days of 30 minutes of activity and every single day, and walking up 12 flights of stairs every single day. So we were successful doing that. And
nice.
And now we're on 60-30. So 60 minutes of exercise a day for 30 days, 60 minutes for 30 days. Yeah. And I was very happy to see that October has 31 days, which means one free day.
Ooh, a rest day. Exciting.
Yeah. So I guess I do a combination of mind and health, have been my priorities, to kind of keep me in the game. And I listen to a lot of music. I listen to a lot of music that I really like, dance music and music with beats to it. And sometimes that's like, I'm that guy who just, or that lady who just turns on the tune.
What's your go-to? What's your go-to tune? Impromptu.
You know what? I never like listen to a specific singer or a specific band or anything. I just have like a whole playlist of stuff that is a combination of, stuff like DJ compilations that are put together.
Yep.
I've got a band from Portugal that
cool.
is really a big hip hop band. And so I don't know, I just kind of put them all together and make it a mash.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so important. What I've kind of come to realize, and probably a lot of people have realized before me, so I'm not going to sound like I'm a smart ass or anything, is music brings energy. And so when you are in a funk or when you're feeling really good, you can kind of, if you tap into the energy of the music and really appreciate it. And this is probably the biggest thing that I learned at that Tony Robbins event that we were at and back in August. And that was the ability to state change. And so when you go to an event of his, it's just constant, as soon as the energy starts to drop, he's like, okay, everybody up. And it's just loud EDM music comes on. Everybody's jumping. And it looks crazy, but it works. It works 100%. And so during my last week at work, I was coming off of that. It was probably a couple of weeks after this event. And so I challenged myself to get uncomfortable and encourage other people to do state changes. We call it the 6 a.m. state change. And the time it took to get from the camp where we were staying to the office was exactly 6 minutes, which is the perfect amount of time for most EDM songs. They build up for like 2 minutes. There's a breakdown for a minute, and then it's like bam, 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 for a minute. And so I would slowly crank the volume from the time we got to camp to the office. And I was able to get my buddy Chris, hopefully he's working or he's listening to this, to go from like, to by the time the bass drops, we're literally pulling up and everybody's just kind of hanging outside and the music's just blaring and I've got my fist out the window pumping. But we're super excited. We walk into work and everyone's like, what's going on with you two? Why are you so feeling so good right now? I'm like, dude, 6 a.m. state changes, get on it.
Yeah, no,
so
it's
important.
So
important.
It's so true. Another one that I just forgot, and I'm just looking at it here. It's right beside me. Is I purchased a rebounder a little while ago.
A rebounder? What's that?
A rebounder. It's like a mini trampoline.
Okay.
That because I had seen there's a young gentleman that I follow online who has been like Tony's been his mentor. But I also, and I think it was in the Guru Netflix version, I saw that Tony Robbins uses this before he goes on stage. He jumps on the rebounder,
right?
Before he goes on stage, and this young guy that I follow also says that he uses one of these when he needs to do a presentation, whatever. And I have to tell you, that in and of itself works too. it just gets your system going as well. And so that's been like 10 minutes of that. And I got to tell you, you are exhausted, but you're alive.
Yeah. I believe it.
And that coupled with, do you ever do the 5-minute ice cold shower?
Oh yeah. I cold shower every day. It's my favorite thing to do. Honestly, one of my favorites.
I got to tell you, with my Mediterranean blood, it's tough, but it really does. It gets you. Yeah.
Totally.
So, yeah, that's the other one.
I keep putting that out there to everybody that I meet, and anybody who wants to up their edge. Cold shower. You do a cold shower. It's just, the rest of the day all of a sudden doesn't look so scary when you do that.
Yeah.
So let's dive into your real estate portfolio, because I do want to get a little bit tactical with you. What does that portfolio look like? You started out with that first property there. It sounded like it was a suite home. And so
actually that one was a half duplex.
Okay. Well, let's start there and let's build from there.
Okay. What can I tell you about it? What would you like to know?
I'd like to know what your portfolio consists of and why you chose the properties and or lending options that you did. Because you mentioned earlier that for somebody that's new, that's starting out, that they need to identify the first thing they need to figure out is where they fit in the game. And so I'd like to hear from you where you saw yourself in the game and how that determined what kind of investments that you got into and what you're continuing to grow.
Perfect. Yeah. So that first investment, as I mentioned earlier, I was working full time. So it was a buy and hold because that's what I was comfortable with. It's what I knew. It's what my family knew. I knew it was a for sure win. Now, in terms of where I purchased it and why I purchased it where I did, that came from Ring. It came from doing the research, looking at the research they had found out already, chatting to people who were in the room. The realtor that I was working with is a specialist, you say, in Fraser Valley. And so it was a discussion around, what type of properties are in that area. And I had an approval for a lot more than what I purchased for. And I did it out of comfort, right? I didn't want to bust the bank on my first purchase. And so I kind of I kind of ballparked myself somewhere where I felt comfortable enough so that I could mitigate if there was anything that came up that I wasn't anticipating, that I'd be able to afford to, fix it or whatever it might be. Not that, an inspection obviously highlighted some of that, and then it was something I could handle. It was a half duplex. It wasn't both sides. It was just one side. So when I looked at the demographics of that area, I knew that it would probably be for a family. And I thought, okay, that's good. They're not going to, typically that's not the clientele that's going to move out right away. Or be there for a year and then move away or this type of thing. So it was just, there was a sense of security around what the property itself could have. And then the other thing I was thinking about, which I do with all my properties, is I wanted to have more than one exit strategy and type of clientele. So the fact that there's it's a satellite of SFU down the street from where this place is, and then there's also the base for the RCMP is down there as well. So I knew that I could potentially have short-term people, short-term tenants. So if the family didn't work out, then at least I had the opportunity for a different type of clientele. The economic factors and, making sure that I was looking at the supply, demand, the jobs, like the brewery went there and that type of thing. The vacancy, I always look at that. What's the vacancy rate? And Chilliwack's at the time was incredible. I think it was 0.5.
So that's the first one. And so what happened after that? It was obviously successful and the market value had gone up, I'm assuming, between the time that it's been bought and currently, because Chilliwack's certainly been a market that has increased over the years. So what happened after that? What did you decide to take on afterwards?
Let me tell you what I didn't take on first.
Sure.
What happened after that was the very following year, the gentleman that sold me my half was now selling the other half. And I didn't purchase it.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's the one that got away. Is what I got to say.
Got a few of those.
And I didn't purchase it because at the time, I felt like that the market had done really well, but what he was giving as a price was a little bit higher than what I thought the market was really at. And I should have went for it anyways. Sometimes it's not in the price, and I still played the price game a little bit back then, which I don't do anymore. And I'll tell you that on my next purchase. But that was a bit of a darn. I should have got in on it because it would have been nice to have both sides. And much easier from a tenant perspective and just from an expense perspective and that type of thing. So anyways, bygones are bygones, live and learn. Following that, I did a rent-to-own JV with someone that I met at an education course. So I met someone at a course, started chatting a lot with her, and then we ended up in a mastermind together. And then she had this opportunity for a house that was in Alberta, in Red Deer. And again, same thing. She had vetted and knew about the property. So again, I didn't do the work on that one, but it was an opportunity to put some money down on it. And she was the one also finding the rent-to-own tenant. And I did go out there to take a peek at the property. And again, two options. The person that was taking it on as a rent-to-own seemed super secure. Everything was in check. But then we had an exit plan that, okay, if this falls through, what are we going to do? And we'd basically take on the property and then have to, what was nice is around the corner was a college. So we thought easily we could make this student rental. So that would have been our exit plan. But I'm happy to say that her great job at finding a rent-to-own tenant sounds like it's coming to fruition on January of this upcoming year. And the tenant has been incredible. And he'll be lucky for him. He'll be getting his house that he wants and will be out of the deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, that's great. And this kind of a cool thing with rent-to-owns for those who maybe aren't aware, but it's really the opportunity to not only do something good for your own business and add value to what you're doing as a portfolio, but it's also a really good way to help somebody else who has maybe gone through something that was outside of their control and they just need a second chance, or they need some time to repair something, typically bad credit, or build up the credit, for new families to Canada who want to own a home, but they don't yet qualify for the mortgages, right? And so it's something that you can really do to add value for people and really impact other people's lives as a real estate investor, which I think is great. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's exactly the situation. This was a gentleman who was unfortunately coming out of a divorce, and he wanted stability for his son. He said, we've put him through enough. And so just even to know that, and to know that his son was going to be able to go to the school around the corner, and that it wasn't too far from his ex-spouse and that type of thing. So, definitely that's a highlight.
I'm seeing a common trend here. One of the things that you're clearly really good at is calculating and protecting against the downside. You've got multiple exit strategies on each of the deals that you did, and it's very clear that was very important to you, right?
Yep.
Can't stress that enough, hey?
Yeah, because I've adopted the principle that I heard from someone else called the SWAN rule. I think it was on a podcast or something I was listening to, and it's sleep well at night. That's how this person does their real estate. And I actually think it's Thomas Byer, if I'm not mistaken, who said that once in an education session. And I have since adopted that principle because I'm like, yep, I want to be able to sleep well at night. So to be able to have other strategies, and if something doesn't go awry with the first plan, what do we do instead of panic? Panic's the last thing we want to do. Or actually, let me rephrase that. You never want to panic. So how do you, what do you fall back on? So yeah, that's definitely been a number one on my radar for sure.
Totally. And so what's next? What happened after that?
So a few private lends that happened, which were great. And again, came from education sessions that I went to and met some people who, were doing some renovations and then refinancing and needed a little bit to kind of get them over the hump. And it started out very small, right? A smaller amount. And it grew as time went on. And as my confidence in the individuals, also grew. And in those deals, what I've really learned was what I don't know, I don't need to know. And it sounds stupid to say that, but what I mean by that is I'm not going to sit here and pretend to understand what the agreement is that you sent to me. And instead of, like, for example, when they give you mortgage on title or a promissory note or, which I've learned since are not the best to have in that type of a transaction, but I've learned over time that the best thing to do is get a hold of those. And now I have a criteria of what I ask for. Get a hold of those and give them to who's the expert, the lawyer. And that, again, has allowed me to do my sleep well at night. The lawyer will tell me what works and doesn't work. And so it's made all of those types of transaction private lends worry-free for me. Like, they've become very much easier. And there's been some people that I would absolutely go for it again. And then maybe some that I wouldn't. But at the end of the day, it's been much easier to move ahead and not have to think that I'm going to sit here and read through that jargon, because I'm not. And it allowed me to move on and look for something else in the interim. So those were really cool. Those were fun and easy. And when I first came out of work, those were good because they, supplemented a bit of income. And
Mm-hmm. And I think it speaks to the importance of the team. Right, we haven't really gotten into this too much, but you mentioned it earlier as well, having a good realtor when you first bought that property in the Fraser Valley, and now having a good lawyer, right? Yeah. So there's so many people on the team and recognizing, again, back to what you said earlier about where do you fit in this conversation? If you're really good as a property manager, okay, you can do that. But if you're not, and you don't want to take the call late at night, then have someone do it for you. Recognize where your value sits. I know I've struggled through that, and you learn the lessons and find the things that you're good at and the things that you want to do. Yep. Two different things, what you're good at and what you want to do.
Yep. And there's always going to be the things you don't want to do. Fair enough. But there's always a way to delegate a portion of it. And I've even found that in my other world. There's always a way that some of it can be delegated, and some, it's still going to fall on my plate, but at least it's not all of it, which means now I enjoy. And real estate's the same. I feel that about real estate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, and we can probably keep going for forever and ever. I do want to kind of tie a bow on what we've been talking about here. I always ask people 3 questions. I want to focus them specifically onto what it is that we've been talking about here, specific to real estate. So what is your current area of focus in terms of growing yourself, both as a real estate investor, but also for the growth of your portfolio?
Sure. So I've alluded to one in that I'm learning to read faster with more comprehension. And of course, always implementation. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth reading. I hate to admit it. I am also really focusing on oh, this is going to be I'm really focusing on what I'm focusing on. I'm actually also right now presently reading The Power of Focus, and where should I put my energies? I feel like I've done a decent job, but I can very easily, make busy. And that's imperative that I alter that. So those are two really big areas for me as I continue to build more of a business in, outside of my portfolios per se. And then, of course, mindset and health set, it's ongoing. That one, there's that in terms of myself, that's always a continued area of focus. In terms of my portfolio, what I'm going to keep working on now is putting my TFSA and my RRSPs to work. So I got to get those two going. Having had the taste of the multifamily, and my managing partner thus far, pretty cool. I'm definitely looking at that again, and looking at a potential purchase in Ottawa, and continuing my learning and, contributing as much as I can back to the community and the industry.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's me there.
That ties into the second question. I don't know if you did that by accident or by intent, but either way, I like it. So the second question revolves around what you're giving. And so what's one of the gifts that you're gladly giving to others as a result of your success within real estate?
I think a few things come to mind, but my time is probably one of the biggest ones. I'm so passionate about this that it never seems like it's a lot of time when I'm talking to people about real estate. So giving my time to particularly new investors who just don't know what direction to turn in, because I was there. And then also I've mentioned earlier, time to my family and intentional time. So that's been an absolute bonus. And then coupled with that comes knowledge, right? To people who are in my position who, maybe have money, don't know how to invest, don't have money, don't know how to get into it, that type of thing. And then another big gift that's come out of this is just a practice that I think, was it a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, actually, we're coming on to. I created a Facebook group called Making a Daily Difference. And the idea behind that Facebook group was to have people just write in there or an example of, or put up a post or something where someone made a daily difference in someone's life. And after the first year of doing it, what I did was I tallied up all the posts we had, and I tallied up the likes, because in my eyes, those that liked meant that they thought about making a daily difference. And it came up to, I think, 435. And so I was able to donate $450 to a cause that we're passionate about, which last year was Habitat for Humanity. So I will continue on that path as well. So that's another thing I feel that, having gone down this route has allowed me to kind of have the extra funds to be able to do something like that and, make it a conscious effort to do it, not just do it when I have money type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah. I like that a lot.
It's a good way to stay grateful and a good way to keep reminders that every day should count.
Definitely. Yeah. So we've certainly... This is always a challenging question because at some points I feel like people have expanded on what it is that they want to do, but I still have to ask it. And so for you, if you kind of think big picture and really expand the limits of what you want and what you want to bring to people, how do you really see yourself expanding your life and expanding your impact on others, not only through real estate, but just through who you are and through who you're being?
That is a good question, and it is pretty deep. I think if I have to say on expanding who I am and who I'm being is just to keep the energy and keep the enthusiasm that I have. And because I know that it helps me, and I know I've been told before that it helps in certain environments, it helps in the room. So I think it's it's a bit, I think maybe that's like one of my callings, to just have good vibe energy. Because God knows sometimes I can go to the other side too. Right. But, just to be mindful of that and, be mindful of, just continuing to network and, so that everybody gets win-win. I strive for nothing more than just every situation to be a win-win situation. It's with my clients and the work I do, or like my patients rather. And then also with, let's say any clients that I've already done through, REIA and the financial life plan stuff. So I'd say I want to keep expanding that. I want to keep expanding, having an impact on like giving a little shake to people, and saying like, man, you know what? It's not, we die once, we live every day. So make it matter, right? And then another thing that I'm expanding on is passing this on to, it's one thing to pass it on to complete strangers, but it's another thing to pass it on to my niece and nephews. I don't have children of my own. So but we do have niece and nephews. And that's a big one for me, is that like, you don't have to do everything we did, but there are lots of opportunities out there, and go maximize on them. And then just to continue to work on my legacy, like on who I am, like an educator, and, both in both fields that I work in, and, continue to have like leadership, a leadership, route, take that, what I did before in my other work, and kind of what I want to be doing here in the real estate world. So yeah.
Amazing.
I don't know if did I answer your question?
You answered the question.
All right, good.
You answered it fully and completely, and it was great. I'm very, very happy with everything. No, this has been fantastic. I'm so, I'm grateful for everybody that comes on the podcast. Without the people who are coming on and sharing their stories and being open and being vulnerable and being willing to share with others, you guys make the show. I'm just here to facilitate the conversation and really provide a platform for people to share their story and really be continuing to increase the value and the impact that they have on other people. That's really what it's all about. So I'm very happy that you were able to make some time here for this. You're the first one in this real estate investor series, and I was grateful for you to come on. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for taking the initiative on something like this. Cause just looking at you, all the stuff you have set up there and all the extra stuff you have to learn to do this. I don't think that people recognize sometimes the degree of expertise that you need to do something like this. So I'm ever so grateful, because I just had to put a set of earphones on and sit in front of the laptop. So I think you've done a fantastic job, and continued success for yourself as well.
Well, thank you very much. Julia Pereira here on the Grow, Give, Expand podcast, the Real Estate Investor Series. Thank you once again, Julia, for stepping on the show.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug.
And therein ends the listen. Thank you once again to my guest, Julia Pereira, for carving out the time to come on the show. I'm incredibly grateful for what Julia is doing and for the initiatives that she's a part of, who she stands for as an investor, and how she's helping people grow on their journey of real estate investing as well. If you want to get in touch with Julia, you can by reaching out to her via email at jpereira@prepareyourlegacy.com. That's JPEREIRA@prepareyourlegacy.com. I'm going to have a number of show notes here available for you, so you can take a look at some of the book recommendations that Julia had, some of the things that she's working on, as well as a link to her Making a Daily Difference Facebook group. That's a fantastic place to check out if you just want to get some positive vibes, see what people are doing, and be reminded that every day you're able to make one small difference in somebody else's life. That is a difference worth making. As we wrap up the first edition of this real estate investor mini-series here on the Grow, Give, Expand podcast, I want to thank you, the listener, for taking the time to tune in. In the coming weeks ahead, we've got a number of real estate investors who are lined up to come speak, to share their stories, and to provide value and knowledge that you can apply in your life and in your real estate investing journeys. Once again, this is Doug Myers on the Grow, Give, Expand podcast. And until next time, keep growing, giving, and expanding.